NetCredit is here to say yes to a personal loan or line of credit when other lenders say no. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. If approved, applications are typically funded the next business day or sooner. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partner. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Content warning for discussions of child abuse, including abuse by a therapist. Someplace underneath.
So I went and I got an HIV rapid test the other day.
Oh.
It's one of those, they prick your finger. It's 1 minute, and it's just good to just do it every few months.
Oh, good for you.
Do it after you have a partner, and then 3 or 4 months after you have the partner, just to make sure it hasn't all settled in.
Yeah.
There's a window.
Yeah.
But when he was reading it to me, he gave me a thumbs up, and he was like, "You're negative." And I was like, "Oh my God." It's the thumbs up, man.
That's confusing.
Yeah, and I was like...
It's like golf.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's the opposite with HIV and you don't want to, you want to be like, be clear what you're saying to me, sir.
Right, but would it be weird if he was like, thumbs up, you're negative? Or like, no, thumbs up, you got it.
Yeah, because positive and thumbs up generally go together. Yeah, that's got to, they should be more aware of that, I feel.
I guess.
There should be a different signal.
Maybe the okay signal, the white power
that's
signal.
That's bad, too. How about just a big congratulations sign?
Where he was like, yay.
Yeah, you're like, yes.
Yay, you didn't get it, yay.
Clapping.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. Who knows? But I went to AHF, I think it's called. Really recommend them. They were so sweet. All of them. Very fast check-in process. Because, it's good to be tested or else it's going to be like a bigger problem in the long run for everybody. And this is like a free service provided by, it's free provided by LA taxpayers.
Yeah.
That's something I'm glad my tax dollars go to.
Absolutely. I wish we could have health care for everybody because we should. And it seems like possible, except that rich people said no.
No, they want us all sick and dead. Boo.
Yeah, boo. Give us more money.
Give us more money.
We're still not going to pay for anything, even though we say we're going to.
No. And then I was chatting with a guy from OkCupid, and I said, sometimes I think about jumping in the pit at the zoo, being with the animals. And then he stopped talking to me. And I'm like, I got to be more mysterious.
You should be you. And if he can't handle you at your jumping in a pit at the zoo, he doesn't get you at your
not jumping in at the pit.
Making him breakfast in bed.
Thank you.
Yes. Welcome to Place Under Neith. I'm Allie Jean.
I'm Amber Nelson.
I think you should never make yourself smaller for a man.
No, never make yourself small and go get tested.
Both of those, please. Those are great ideas.
Thank you.
Much more, to me, effective ideas than some of the things that people are saying in this episode that we're talking about.
Right. So you have a picture attached, and is it wrong? Am I ovulating? The first thing I thought was, I'd suck his dick.
What?
I don't know this man.
This
I don't know.
guy?
Robert Dindinger.
This guy?
Yeah.
Amber.
I know. It's horrible. I'm a feral woman.
I guess.
Stop.
That facial hair pattern, huh?
Well, I'm not kissing him. I'm just sucking his dick.
Oh my God, Amber, I think maybe you need to just, I feel like in a different moment in time, you would go, oh my God, why did I say that?
Right. I just know I'm A-okay.
You're okay. I'm going to say also no judgment because she doesn't know who this man is.
Yeah, I don't know.
We have to preface everything with that She didn't know what he's arrested for.
He's arrested?
Yes.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I gotta go
Amber.
to church.
No, that is where, that's not where you should go. I'm sorry, but everything we're going to learn today and what we've been talking about, I don't think you should go to church.
Oh, fuck, what would this fucking guy do?
So, yeah, I did start this script by Babe Get Up, a new predatory psychologist from BYU just dropped.
Oh.
It's not silly. We're being silly because I don't know how else to process all of this all the time. So it's not a silly thing that happened. We've somewhat moved a little bit past this portion of the season about psychotherapy in the LDS Church, but I wanted to highlight how present and active this issue still is in the church. And yes, I'm including the church in this man's arrest because he was practicing, once again, sex addiction counseling, which is an LDS exclusive-ish kind of counseling that happens out in the Mormon Belt. And he was working heavily with children.
Natalie.
Yes.
Is he a pedophile?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you could put him in that category, yeah.
No, I don't want to suck his dick. I take it back.
I would hope so.
I take it back.
So this man's name is Robert Didinger? I don't know. And he was working with children. And in fact, he started his illustrious career working with a place called Juneau Youth Services, which is in Alaska, which he described as providing supervision and support for adolescent sex offenders, victims of sexual abuse, substance dependence, and other challenges related to severely emotionally disturbed adolescents. I will like to preface this by saying this is very hard to hear, but this is an excerpt from the KSL news story.
A Utah psychologist and author of a book on pornography addiction is facing criminal charges accusing him of convincing child clients to strip naked during sessions so he could secretly record them. Robert Virgil Dindinger, 54, of Spanish Fork, was charged on Thursday in the 4th District Court with 10 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor, a second-degree felony, and 2 counts of voyeurism, Class A misdemeanor. Damn.
And there's more accusations against him, including groping and forcing cuddling on his patients, which is hauntingly similar to some of the LDS therapists we covered some episodes back who were doing this in the 70s and 80s during the Satanic Panic and the 90s. But I'm bringing him up because this is not some ancient history guy. He graduated BYU in 2012. So this is still ongoing. And then he also was helping, he was like an adjunct professor or whatever, all the way up to 2019. So he was then teaching people at BYU about sex addiction, which again is not recognized by most therapists.
Yeah, and also, what does he say, minor sex crimes or whatever?
Yeah, he was working with very distressed, abused, and also abusive children. And he was, God knows, doing what? Because some of the people who've come forward in this case, even if he's not facing the direct charges, have said that he was touching them on their bottoms and like making them describe sexual assaults while like rubbing their thighs. Like awful man.
Oh my God, I'm disgusted. I want to burn myself.
No, you didn't know.
I didn't know.
But I also would say I don't think you should be dating men with this facial hair pattern because it's gross.
It is. I won't.
Thank you.
So here's a man in a position of power and authority. People trust him, and he's being given a very vulnerable position with vulnerable children who, I guess, this is going to sound crazy, they're less likely to be believed.
Oh, 100%.
From something they had nothing, they're victims.
Yes.
They didn't do it.
It's the insidious nature of the Satanic Panic in general, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about a case that's ongoing in the next episode that is basically showing how doing stuff like Satanic Panic, mania kind of things where you're just making stuff up about people, sometimes the actual victims are there in the story, but it gets becomes a wash because you're saying, yeah, also there was a community cult thing that would happen in the basement and all of the parents in the neighborhood would string the kids upside down. Meanwhile, there is like a real kernel of a real accusation in the middle that probably happened with one person, but because you're going through these regressive memory therapies and stuff, then all of this phony baloney stuff comes out. And then the people who are the most vulnerable, like these victims of this guy, they don't get any justice either, because then when everybody realizes, oh, this is like satanic panic nonsense, this doesn't make any sense, all of it gets thrown out. And thankfully that didn't happen here, but that is the reason why a lot of these people prey on these kind of people, because and why they some people take this kind of job, because they have that power and they are less likely to have the victims be believed in the long run. The reason that I'm connecting it to the church beyond him being a member and beyond him going to BYU is because he is using this bunk science in his counseling. And I looked through his book online. I didn't buy it, but you can look at the sample pages, and it is the standard following the same guidelines as most LDS sex addiction counselors, including Jody Hildebrand, including Tom Harrison, all these people. And it's the same mentality that we see in a lot of evangelical communities, that if you start consuming porn, you'll eventually end up needing CSAM and I guess like horse stuff.
And not just like a nice consensual, like the last porn I saw, it was for ladies. Mm-hmm. It was all like white and beautiful. And it was very like, she was just like, oh, I love you.
You mean like light, not white person. But
like a light room.
Yes.
It's like curtains. And
sure.
I was like, this is nice.
Yeah, sure. Yes, exactly. Which, that is along the same mentality of the gateway, the thing that they were saying about weed. It's the gateway drug. When you start doing weed, you're going to end up under a train trestle shooting up. And that's the same mentality they're having, but there's no science to back that up. And to be honest, at the end of the day, having that mentality, doesn't it make those kind of communities composed of the scariest people on earth?
Yeah.
I'm starting to take away from all of this that the concept that takes the strongest hold in the LDS community and other evangelical kind of conservative communities is that we'd all be consuming dark web stuff, if not for fear of punishment. Right, guys?
Right.
We're all just dying to get in there.
I guess it is like the DARE program. You're right. Because the cops used to come to the school. For all the Gen Z that listen, DARE program was like the cops would come to your school and be like, if you smoke weed, you might as well be smoking crack. And then I remember smoking weed and I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. So I guess I'll just go do some Molly. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And no, it's not.
You still haven't gotten to crack, but, there's still time.
There's still time.
We'll see. And that, again, was connected to the war on drugs, which was, at the core of it, racism, and has put many, many people in jail for decades who are not dangerous. Yeah. And we don't seem to care as much about the really dangerous guys as long as they look like they're Mormons or whoever, it's a lot. The sentences are a lot shorter. No Prisoners Project works with Last Podcast Network, and they try to get people out of jail who are incarcerated for weed, which there are still thousands of people in this country in jail for weed.
I'd be so mad if I've been in jail from the 70s from weed, when there's like dispensaries opening in California, like
celebrities, celebrities with their own weed lines and stuff, and you're rotting. What can you imagine? It's horrible. Last Prisoner Project. Go check it out.
We spoke with licensed clinical social worker and content creator Mickey Atkins about how the obsessive nature of sex addiction therapy fits in surprisingly well with the obsessive nature of doomsday prepping. And we also discuss how the police state nature of a high control group helps create an alternative reality for its members.
When you grow up in a high control environment with a lot of surveillance, your brain is still developing to sort of form an idea about the world, right? And your identity and how you fit within that world. So being in this high control environment where you're used to being surveilled all the time is going to make you anxious, right? Because you're constantly being policed, you're policing yourself, which that's that internalized authority figure thing, right? You're sort of being groomed to be hypercritical of yourself and of other people so as to avoid sometimes physical, literal danger, but also like psychological danger. I don't want to be told that I'm like a bad person. I don't want to be told that I'm sinful or lacking. So we're constantly interrogating ourselves. But if we find a safe place in therapy by saying, you know, I did this thing and I feel really weird about it, right? I feel guilty or I feel sad. And then your therapist's like, cool. I'm going to go tell your mom though, right? That's reinforcing that surveillance thing. And it makes you feel very alone in the world. That's going to be an attachment problem. That's going to be an anxiety problem. That's going to probably have some blowback on your self-esteem and your identity. Like we could just sort of like run down the list. Like none of that is good. And it's probably going to create long-lasting effects in your mental health as an adult.
And then you consume even more of it. We just got a message from somebody, I won't reveal anything about them, but they say, you know, especially in Mormonism, because it's such an addiction, the sex addiction, that men will be sitting in their cars like all day just watching porn.
Right. That's like that is something we keep seeing over and over and listening from people's stories is they're just constantly thinking about sex because they're told you cannot think about it. Don't think about it. Don't. Like, what is that going to do?
Exactly. Well, and it's interesting too because we, especially, I mean, one of the areas of specialty that I practice as a clinician is also in eating disorder recovery and body image stuff, right? The model that we have for eating disorder treatment is shockingly similar to the way that we would ideally treat other compulsive behaviors, notably sexually compulsive behaviors, which is that when we prescribe restriction, that we, like as an accidental byproduct, create binging, right? I think the great example of this is like Halloween candy. Parents who tell their kids, like, you get one piece of Halloween candy a day for the next 6 months, right? It's very common for parents to share these stories in like a haha jokey way, right? My kid found their Halloween candy and went and ate all of it in their closet, right? And then they had a stomachache, which is sort of cute. It's kind of funny, right? But like, really what we're doing though is teaching a child in that example that Halloween candy is this very special and exclusive and interesting thing. So much so that I have to moderate your intake of it because you can't be trusted. You are a fundamentally unreliable and broken person who cannot control their own impulses. So I'll do it for you. That way you never have to learn how to moderate yourself, right? That child's never going to realize that like, when you eat a handful of chocolate all at once, probably going to get a bellyache, you know? That's not going to feel great. And so the same thing is true for other behaviors. So it's kind of like a funny paradoxical thing that these religions do where sex is immodest, right? Talking about our bodies or wearing clothing that's like revealing, it's immodest, so don't do it. But then they become obsessed. They're fixated on it. They're these entities that sort of endlessly talk about it, which then makes people want to think about it and talk about it more.
And it puts a lot of anxiety on the women of that religion because you're like, oh, I'm responsible for his actions based on like my aura or my shoulder. So now I'm stressing out.
I thought it was a fun comparison of seeing the little kid with the stomachache because it is, to me, it feels like they're treating 45-year-old men who are supposed to be the like leaders of their house, like little babies who can't stop themselves from stuff, and yet they're supposed to be like running stuff at the same time.
The leader of the household who's supposed to be making the rules and in charge of everything, but apparently cannot be trusted with a cell phone that doesn't have covenant eyes on it. Like,
it sounds like things to be locked away.
Yes, exactly.
It seems like if a person isn't taught, the self-control and the boundaries and like how to moderate yourself and how to have empathy for others and is just told, don't do it. It's all bad. All of it's bad. Don't look, don't think. The inevitable conclusion is that a large portion of those people are not going to be able to disregard normal human emotions and needs. And the constant anxiety is going to make some people go cuckoo.
Yeah.
It just seems like that's what's going to happen. And it's so weird that you get into this sort of mentality of like, don't ever look at it, don't think about it, don't do any of it. You come to the same end as somebody who has had no supervision, like a kid that's been left alone and neglected by the parent.
Yeah.
And then they're also not able to moderate. They're also not able to like feel empathy or have personal boundaries because they weren't taught them. And it's so weird that those two ends come to the same result a lot of the time.
They do. And also with feminism. So it's like, I had the realization the other day, like pick-me's, it's like a hair away from like, I hate men, kill them all, because you're still centering everything around men.
Oh, 100%. I agree very much.
But if you're just like, oh, they're people, I hope they're okay.
And also, it's okay to hold them accountable, but like they're people.
They're people.
And yes, definitely. Like hating and gender is like hating a race. It's stupid. It doesn't, it's very, there's no nuance. And I think some of these communities have a hard time with nuance. They really struggle with it.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode, idiot.
Are you having sex with Vyleesi? Well, if you have low sex drive like millions of other women, you might be missing out. Vyleesi, or bremelanotide, is clinically proven to increase sex drive in certain women. It's the first and only FDA-approved, as-needed treatment for low sex drive. Put low sex drive in its place and go to Vyleesi.com for a telemedicine appointment to learn if Vyleesi is right for you. That's VYLEESI.com. Vyleesi is a prescription medicine used to treat hypoactive sexual desire disorder, HSDD, in premenopausal women who have not had problems with low sexual desire in the past and have low sexual desire no matter the type of sexual activity, situation, or partner. The low sexual desire is troubling to them and is not due to medical, mental health, or relationship problems, or medicine or other drug use. Do not use Vyleesi if you have uncontrolled hypertension or known heart disease. The most common side effects include nausea, flushing, injection site reactions, headache, and vomiting. Consult your healthcare professional for more information and see full PI at Vyleesi.com or call 800-922-1038. Go to Vyleesi.com for a telemedicine appointment to find out if Vyleesi is right for you. That's VYLEESI.com.
And so the reason I'm bringing this up is beyond its being another case that just came out. It's still relevant as we cover the doomsday portion of this scary, dark ride through Mormonism because, as we've discussed, there are therapy professionals at the helm of some of these groups, especially since Tom Harrison, who is, again, a bishop, a mental health professional, and a creator of Eternal Core, is also heavily involved in doomsday culture. He, along with Ken Krogh, added a level of legitimacy to these incredibly haunting and violent ideas that go on in these prepper communities. And it draws a lot of other legitimizing kind of people into the fray, other people with, psychology degrees and people who are upstanding business people in the community. It's not these, I think the idea that some LDS might want you to feel is like, oh, these preppers are these guys that crawl out of the forest and they're like, they're just like, yeah, I'm good, and these like kind of outsiders, and they're not. They're like pillars of the community in this church.
And you have to have a lot of money to be able to have that much rice in the basement. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And there have been, unfortunately, inside of these prepper cultures, people who have lost their everything they own because they put all of their money into banking on the last days coming, sell their house, sell all of their assets. They buy so much prepper stuff that they don't have any money left in their bank accounts. It happens over and over again. This is like not an uncommon story.
Oh, God. And you wake up the next day that the world's supposed to end and you're just like, it didn't? Ugh.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
It's a
really big bummer. It's still here. So, it draws in people like Jody Hildebrand. It draws in LifeStar founder Dan Gray, who's probably, I don't know what's going on with that guy, but LifeStar is one of the worst of the sex addiction counseling entities in the LDS culture. And then, of course, it draws in people like Tim Ballard, who we're going to be getting into quite a bit soon. But the doomsday of this all isn't new. Of course, it's the entire premise of the church. So in modern history, in September of 2015, almost 10 years prior to this recording now, the Salt Lake Tribune released an article entitled,
"Some Mormons Stocking Up Amid Fears That Doomsday Could Come This Month."
So in 2015 in this country, we were filled with sweet summer children who weren't quite up to the onslaught of the 2016 election. And probably a lot of parts of the country weren't thinking too much about the apocalypse in 2015. all of the big ones we had been worried about as millennials, 11 came and went.
Or the computers in 2000.
And Y2K. And then 2012 passed by, and there was some really awful, devastating environmental things like Hurricane Sandy. But it was a far cry from the Mayan prophecies that some people were worried about. But in the Mormon Belt in 2015, end date preparations were underway. Again, for the 11,000th time.
I mean, maybe they're kind of right. Maybe the world did end around the election.
That's true. There is that theory that people feel like when they die, they just get shot onto another timeline.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun. You can just be in a different, similar, parallel Earth. But maybe you have 4 nipples. That's it. Only difference.
Oh, right. But it was fine the whole time. But me and my dumbass has 2. And I'm like, what y'all doing with 4 nipples? And they're like, you look so ugly with 2 nipples.
Like, no, everyone has 2, right? So maybe they're all correct. We don't know. But as we understand reality, it hasn't happened. And in 2015, there was another upswing of panic about the end days. And the Salt Lake Tribune article covered how, due to one LDS woman's warnings, this uptick included buying a bunch of survival stock, including food storage, flashlights, blankets, and tents.
Jordan Jensen, a salesman at Emergency Essentials, says his bountiful store has been crazy busy, sales up by definitely a large amount. Those 72-hour emergency kits are almost impossible to keep on the shelves, Jensen says, and we get a shipment every day. A lot of customers, he says, believe in this is the month it will all happen with a blood moon and a currency collapse and everything.
So
too much.
Yeah, it's a lot. Far before TikTok and conspiracy theorists in the White House and the widespread disinformation campaigns we now see, superstitions and paranoia have always existed in humans. And I think a lot of people could argue that it's a design feature and not a flaw because in some ways that's how humans kind of made it to here, being a little paranoid and superstitious because that's how we learned what kills us and what doesn't.
That's true.
It's also how we began to understand science and nature is having superstitions and things. But yet, all the way in the big year of 2025, we have access to knowledge and technology, and somehow that's made things even more frightening in some ways. For example, we had that completely documented, planned, normal eclipse that was, I think, 2024. Was that last year when that happened?
Right, and the lady killed her family.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just, that was horrifying and awful, but it wasn't just that extreme. There were a lot of people who were like, outside of the LDS world too, just like, this is it. All the signs, they're pointing at this eclipse. And it's like, science knows it's coming. It's not like a big surprise. The eclipse is coming. But people planned for the end when that happened. And that's really intense to think about in the year of 2024, that it would cause that many people to crash out. But it's just something that technology has fueled in a different way, I think.
Yeah, you were speaking on technology. My algorithm was just like the moon, and everybody's getting really hysterical about it. And then I had to think, everybody's got to have a unique thought and a one-up each other. Because that's how the system works. You got to have the fresh new thing. Mm-hmm. And it's too much.
You could argue that is what maybe they take away from having near-death experiences in the LDS cultures, that when you have an NDE, you have this up level. You're like, well, I have the scoop.
Right.
I went another level, so let me tell you about it.
And then another person's like, oh, yeah, well, I went to the second one, the Bowser's Kingdom.
Yeah, I've had 4. I'm dead right now.
Oh, I'm dead right now. Everybody's got to one-up each other.
Yeah. So in September of 2015, that news article is talking about there was going to be a blood moon mixed with some interpretations of the Book of Mormon and the Book of Revelations, and including some visions a woman had due to a near-death experience. So these preparations, these panic preps, were largely due to a couple books that had sold tens of thousands of copies in the Mormon Belt. Of course, we had Visions of Glory had been out by then, but there were 2 newer books. One called A Greater Tomorrow, My Journey Beyond the Veil, and the other is called The Time Is Now. And they were written by Julie Rowe, who we've talked a little bit about. It's a bizarre feeling to go read this Archive 2015 article talking about Rowe and her publishing company called Spring Creek Publishing, knowing what transpired over the next few years. Spring Creek Publishing, of course, was owned by Chad Daybell, who is a murderer. But at this time, he was just a publisher working inside the Doomsday Prepper community in the LDS Church. The books were popular enough that Julie ended up on a Fox News radio show describing her visions, including
scores of white tents where people will live in the mountains and sometimes be fed heavenly manna. She saw a bomb from Libya landing in Israel, but Iran will take credit.
So nearly anyone in the mainstream church we've spoken to and anything we've listened to knows of and has participated in food storage to varying degrees. What she's describing in these books and what she was describing in that interview, it takes some people a level up of fear. So food storage is a very mainstream LDS culture thing. Not everyone goes into financial debt or ruin from it, but many have said that their goal is to have a year's worth of food for their family at all times. So the idea that she's saying she's having these visions and the white tents and everything, it's not that far removed from the everyday member's experience. It's like 2 steps more intense, let's say.
Do you think she just accidentally bought like a big vessel of slop bucket food? It was like, fuck, I gotta sell this. I had visions. I have this bomb in Libya. You gotta buy my food.
I think that that's true for some people. For Julie Rowe, I do not think that's the case. Along with most people, it's hard to, I don't want to make fun of her because I do think she's extremely mentally ill, but
she'll find us.
I mean, maybe, but she is, I would call her a character. She's been excommunicated, but she's very active on TikTok if you want to see what she's up to. She is actually, it's funny, I forgot to put this in the script. She is still doing what she calls energy readings, I think, but she's having a convention that's coming up. It's like a conference. The tickets start at $444 for her energy sessions.
Oh, is 4 like a magic number or something?
I guess, but that's the starting price for tickets.
That's a lot. She also has fiancé gums. You ever heard of fiancé gums?
No, but I feel like it's going to be mean.
That's when your gums are real big.
You know, she can't help that.
She can't help it. We all got a body, but I just think it's kind of funny that whatever.
She clearly is not mentally well. And when she was in 2015, she was still in the church and she was very highly regarded in this community of the LDS. So when Rowe put these books out, they caused, much like when we talked about Visions of Glory, when she put these books out, it caused enough of an uproar and like a fanaticism that the church called her out. And so she was forced to put out a statement, much like Tom was after these books came out. The church kind of wanted to warn people that, like, yeah, there are prophets, like, they're prophets, and there are end days, but like ours are the ones and not her, okay? We're the right ones, not hers. And so she had to make a public statement about her books, similar to what Tom had to do for Visions of Glory. This is part of what she said.
My story is not intended to be authoritative nor to create any church doctrine, she said. It is simply part of my personal journey that I have chosen to share in hopes that it can help people to prepare for the times we live in by increasing their faith in Christ and by looking to our prophet for the church leaders for guidance.
Man, your Southern accent came out there.
I don't know why. I feel like
it sounds like something you maybe would have heard in church or something.
Yeah.
So you can see there, she said very similar to Tom, that I'm not saying I'm speaking for the church, and I'm also not saying I'm a prophet. I'm saying I'm just sharing my experiences. But as she said these things, much like Tom, they sort of winked at certain parts of the audience, going like, yeah, I'm not like a prophet.
No.
Like, am I?
But, I'm not a prophet. I just like see things, and I'm helping you out. Yeah. So I'm sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, and because when people in the church like are already set up to believe in prophecies and prophets and God speakers, who's to say who the real God speakers are? In my opinion, it's none of them, but for people who are already primed for this frame of thought in the church, maybe it is her, maybe it is Tom. That's what some of the community went. Like, maybe the church is wrong this time. Maybe they're the actual prophets. And so they continue to have a huge following, even though the church made them like distance themselves from their prophecies. They also, at the time, were not excommunicated, though Julie Rowe now is.
Is this like the satanic panic thing where like the kernel of truth gets overridden by all the noise? So maybe there is a real prophet in here and they're like, no.
I mean, there could be. I don't think there's a prophet in there, but it's possible.
Yeah.
But I think the way that kernel of truth might work into that is that the church they can't push back too hard, because then they have to be like, well, having somebody say they're a prophet is crazy. They can't say that. So they have to sort of dance around it and also try their best to not pull people away from the church while they're acknowledging that, like, yes, she sounds like she might be mentally ill and she's saying crazy stuff. I know it sounds a lot like what we're saying, but it's different, okay? It's really different. So just, it's really different.
Yeah, don't look at us, our 100-year-old leader who has visions in his white tower. That's normal.
That's normal. That's weird. So because some people still follow them, you know, this is still a community inside of the church, and these are still church-going members who are following them for the most part. And some people really take a lot from the way Julie spoke, the way Tom speaks. But I got to say, on a personal level, listening to all of these people monologuing, you can find them all over the internet if you want to listen to more of them speaking. Man, are these some certified grade A gooners talking. We've played some clips of Tom Harrison and Ken Krogh, and if you remember that voice, they all really sound like that. Chad Daybell sounds like that. And when I saw a vision, I was outside my body, and I saw them all masturbating. And I thought, those poor souls.
Oh, them boys.
And that's how they'll talk. But some people find that very captivating. And I just want to say, for all of you out there, you're doing great. And don't feel insecure about your pursuits, because time and time again as an adult, you find the people who get the furthest might not be the smartest or the most capable or the nicest. They're just simply extremely confident. And so those men are very confident in their thoughts, and they have a whole fan base, you know?
Oh, yeah. There was a guy that built a water park, and he's like, yeah, I know how to build a slide. Fuck it. Yeah. And he was so confident. Everybody was like, yeah, okay. I think a child died because he did not know how to build a water slide.
You're talking an action park?
Yes.
That's the New Jersey one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just go through life like that guy.
Do it. I mean, to be honest, I never got to go to that park, but it looked kind of fun. But yes, a lot of people got hurt there.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Idiot.
Nearly home. Isn't home where we all want to be? Reba here for Realtor.com, the pros' #1 most trusted app. Finding a home is like dating. You're not just looking for a place to live, you're searching for the one. That's where Realtor.com comes in. Like any good matchmaker, they know exactly where to look. With over 500,000 new real listings straight from the pros every month, you could find your perfect match today. Ranch style with a pool? Barn dominium with an in-law suite? Realtor.com's got them. Modern craftsman with a big yard and a treehouse out back? Realtor.com will have you saying, yep, that's the one. No more swiping. It's time to start finding. Download the Realtor.com app today, cause you're nearly home. Make it real with Realtor.com.
Pros #1 most trusted app based on August 2024 proprietary survey. Over 500,000 new listings every month based on average new for sale and rental listings. February 2024 through January 2025.
That's all to say, with the constant fear of your own thoughts, of the end of days, of whether your family is going to be worthy, prepperism fits in really well because you're preparing, things like food storage, and some people it's more like food hoarding. This becomes a hoarding issue a lot for people because that is connected to anxiety, right? The fear of the last day, you're not going to believe this, it comes with a lot of anxiety. But so the food storage, the emergency plans, it makes sense why that would fit perfectly into the Latter-day Saints community because you are told to be afraid, essentially, at all times. And the prepping might help sweep the fear back for a couple hours at a time. So we had begun to break down another voice of warning, or AVOW, which is a website and not the only one, but one of the only meccas of the prepper culture in the church. AVOW is a combination website, message board, store, prepper news center, et cetera, where many of these figures we've talked about convene. It's in fact believed that Chad Daybell met Julie Rowe on the AVOW website in the first place. Chad was really into AVOW, and Lori, his co-murderer, also became entrenched in it. A lot of the vocabulary that Chad and Lori used in the crime evidence after the murders was AVOW language, which is ultimately mostly Book of Mormon language. AVOW is almost, again, exclusively Mormons and lives in that nebulous world that so many of these subgroups do, the FUMBUM, for Mormons by Mormons, but not produced by the church. Reminder, AVOW was formed by Roger K. Young and then mostly taken over by a man named Christopher Parrott. I highly, highly recommend you go watch his daughter's interview on Mormon Stories. It's so important that she came forward. She reveals a lot about that community. Christopher Parrott was so close to Chad and Lori that the police thought the children might be in Parrott's house when they were still considered missing. Chad and Christopher also wrote a book together at one point. So this is all very interconnected. So all of this stuff that's happening, all these crimes, the therapy abuse, the prepperism stuff that results in death, the church is ignoring it as much as humanly possible. Probably partially because a lot of the participants are high-up members, many of whom hold power in the church. They're sort of stuck. Address it too much, and it might cause an upheaval inside the church, and tithings will get pulled away. Address it not enough, and the outside world starts knocking and asking, like, what's going on in the church, bro? So they have to find this weird dance where exactly what we were just talking about with Julie Rowe, being like, you can't totally denounce her because then it takes away all of our ideas.
Yeah.
But you can't kick her out really fast. You can't take her back in. You can't put her on a pedestal. You have to sort of dance around. You want to keep, I think the church's idea is stay out of the news as much as humanly possible. And so they try to avoid it.
That's weird that that's the only nuance they have.
Yeah, it is the only nuance.
It's like, how can we get away with it?
How can we make sure we lose the least amount of money?
Yeah.
Is their main nuance, yes. Like the book Visions of Glory and the community around it, AVOW, Parrott, and his minions lived by the idea that 144,000 people were going to create a new Zion after the last days occurred. And in order to get there, they would have to live through the prophesied death and destruction of the rapture. If you are chosen and worthy, there would be this event we talked about called the Call Out, according to the AVOW website. The 144,000 gets more connected to Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's also a part of the LDS doctrine, the very beginning. This is Joseph's prophecies. And it's also present directly on the LDS website. So if you go to the website and if you want to find the section that's basically things we know about the book of Revelation because of Joseph Smith, it gives a big old chart on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints website. And in the restoration portion, according to Joseph Smith and his Doctrine and Covenants,
the 4 angels and the 144,000 servants sealed from the tribes of Israel relate to the work of the restoration and the gathering of the last days. They sure do love their charts and graphs with insane shit in it.
They do. They have so many of them. Yes, so what we're looking at is from the website. You can go look it up. It is a chart of how the last days are going to go according to Joseph Smith's interpretation of the book of Revelation. So it is a part of the basis of their doctrine. the special people, those called out, which is like the AVOW then puts a spin on what the Book of Mormon says about it, if that makes sense. So these subgroups are doing fanfic of the Book of Mormon, which is doing fanfic of the Bible.
Oh my gosh. So is it kind of like the Bible and then there's like the King James version?
Kinda.
Yeah.
They definitely see the people who are the deepest entrenched in this and are doing the most crazy things, including Lori Vallow, including Jodi Hildebrandt. They see themselves as biblical figures. Like they're in their minds, they're like, in 400 years, it's going to be like the Book of Lori, the Book of Jodi. Like that's how they see it.
Oh my God. They're worse than the water park guy.
They are worse than the water park guy. I agree. At least in the water park, you get to go down a slide.
Yeah.
So this special people, this 144,000, it is more focused on in groups like AVOW, but it is a part of the church, even if they're not talking about it every Sunday the way maybe Jehovah's Witnesses are. The special people are, I guess, called out by, I think, Moroni or one of the people in the book. So to kind of describe this from an LDS person, I'm going to play a clip. This is actually Lori Vallow's cousin. His name's Braxton Southwick. I find him very disturbing and very unsettling as a person. He was not a part of the crimes of Lori Vallow. He didn't take part in the murders, but he is part of the prepper community, and he was very close with Lori because they were both really into Visions of Glory and AVOW and all this stuff. So he has been interviewed a few times, and this guy, Lori's cousin Braxton, was also featured heavily on, I think it was a Discovery Channel show for being a prepper. So he's also been on TV before. Here's a clip of him as he tries to explain what the 144,000 mean through the lens of Mormonism.
This is a major book of Revelation. I feel like most Christian religions believe in the 144,000.
Yeah.
I've asked many, many people, including LDS, what the 144,000 means. So what, Braxton, are the 144,000?
The 144, gosh, I hope I get this right. This is what I've been taught and learned, but the 144,000 isn't, a lot of people think there's only going to be 144,000 left here on earth when Jesus Christ comes, and that is not true. The 144,000 is, you have the 12 tribes of Israel, and what is that? There's 12,000 people in each tribe. So the Jewish tribe has 12, the Ephraim tribe has 12,000. These are 12,000 people of each of the 12 tribes that are kind of going to be leaders and teachers of the rest of the people. So I don't know how many people they're going to be here when Jesus Christ comes. 10 million, 100 million, I have no idea. But the 144,000 are kind of leaders and teachers of the rest of the people.
And so going back to one of the first things you said, wiping the wicked from the earth, is that what happens before the second coming?
Yeah, that's the 7 years of tribulation.
And the righteous survive and the wicked are destroyed.
Yes. The righteous are taken off the earth, and then the last thing that happens to this earth is another planet comes extremely close to it and burns it. And the whole planet, as it turns, just burns completely, everything, every tree root, every living organism, everything. The rapture is where everybody is taking off this earth and goes into heaven right before the very end. And the very wicked that are left will be burned to stubble.
I can't imagine someone looking me in the eye and then being like, yeah, and then you're going to burn.
Mm.
You're going to burn to a stubble. What?
He's almost happy.
He's almost happy about it. It's almost like they had this vindictive thing in their life.
So, okay, first I want to commend, that's Lauren Mathias's interview from Hidden in True Crime. I commend her for her work. She's an incredible journalist, and she is really able to get these kind of interviews done because she comes from an LDS background. And like that guy, I could never interview him, nor would he ever want to talk to me because he scares the crap out of me. But she does a great job of getting him to just talk and say the things that he really thinks. And Braxton here what he's describing is also what Lori and Chad believed as they were murdering their family members. They were very convinced that they were a part of those tribes that he described, the 144,000 people who were going to be the new leaders of the world. And in that mental space, that this prepperism, these literally tens to hundreds of thousands of LDS members, this is not a couple people, believe that billions of people are going to be murdered and executed during the end times. And not them, because they're the saints, they're the Latter-day Saints. It's not going to be the members of the church. They're going to stay. They're going to be fine as long as they're members of the church. But the fantasy is that everybody else is executed. And Braxton here, who we were just listening to, displays something I've seen a lot from this type of LDS member. It's this sort of gleeful anticipation of all the people being murdered who are wicked, all their haters. It's so disturbing. It really, really is upsetting to look at.
It's school shooter energy.
It is. It absolutely is. I'm sorry to say that, but that's exactly what I feel. And again, another thing I recommend everybody watch is that interview. He multiple times when talking about this starts to smile. You can see how excited he is. And this is a common theme for some LDS preppers, the excitement for the violence. The way that Braxton talks about billions of people being executed, I just don't understand how this can be considered spirituality. It's really, really, really sad. So the 10 cities we were talking about, Julie Rowe brought up in that article in 2015, the 10 cities are still in this era of time as important to the ideology of this community inside the church. It's about being called out. It's called the call out, literally, according to AVOW. And Chad and Lori just knew that they were part of the 144,000. Julie Rowe very much knew she was a part of the 144,000. And though she didn't create that idea, they really ran with it. And they were convinced that the 10 cities were going to be near Rexburg, which is where they were. The long and short of all of this is that what extremist, quote unquote, Chad and Lori thought was the same as AVOW, which is thousands and thousands of people, which is mostly the same as the mainstream church's beliefs. It's just elevated like 3 notches up on the volume.
Right.
You can argue that the preppers pushed it to its extreme, but they are going off of what the prophet Joseph Smith wrote as their doctrine. The Rapture, the 144,000, the latter days. It's in the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Doctrine and Covenants, written by their prophet. If you're dismissing what the preppers are saying, then what is the church? If you're abandoning what Joseph Smith said, what are we doing here?
We're giving money to the 100-year-old in the ivory tower, Natalie.
Yeah, we sure are.
That's what we're doing.
What a number of people have said who are adjacent to this community, including Braxton here, whom we just listened to, in essence, is that these preparations aren't said from the pulpit on Sundays, but they are discussed in the church building in between, and that it aligns with the church in almost every way, including bishops and high-up members are talking about it. Maybe they're not sitting in the pews having this discussion about the 10 cities, but it's in the halls of the LDS church. It's in the temple. It's in the meetings, the hangouts. That's when this is all being planned, and it is only Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, it's like baked into the doctrine.
Mm-hmm. It is. Part of me feels like the people who are arguing it's not mainstream LDS is that they might be so immersed in mainstream LDS culture, so entrenched in their life, that they think these things, what I consider to be a little nuance of difference, seem like caverns to them because they're not looking at it through a lens that's bigger than the LDS church, right?
Right.
Their biggest edges is the church.
Because we're comparing this to like other religions.
And or like just society.
Society. And they're just like, no, but this is like...
This is so different from what I do in church every Sunday or every 4 days that I'm at church or whatever. But it's like, yeah, but you're only looking at it to the edges of LDS as a whole and not going like from a wider scope.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. Maybe you're not doing, you're not like collecting rifles in your basement, but a bunch of people you're friends with in your church are.
And they're calling themselves this.
Yes. And they're using the same books and they're doing the same. It's almost like the everyday member is thinking about these things and the prepper is acting them out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. And so a lot of people do think that the last day is any day now, even the ones who aren't doing extreme prepperism, because it's the Latter-day Saints. Chad Frankie, for example, the eldest son of Ruby Frankie, has said in recent interviews that because he was being taught by Jody, when they got arrested, he was still very much in the mindset that Jody and Ruby were right for doing what they were doing. And he said now that he's come out of it, when they got arrested, he was anticipating the Rapture was starting any day, that the jails were going to open up and that the rest of the world was going to understand what his mom and Jody Hildebrandt were doing.
Oh, God. What's that thing where you like fall with your abuser, Munchausen by proxy?
Munchausen? It's called, oh my God. Adam, you know.
You know, you're smart.
Stockholm. It's called Stockholm Syndrome.
It's just Stockholm Syndrome, which I can understand having because if you don't, then you're like, oh, I was abused. And that was actually very bad. It's like a way of your brain protecting you.
Yeah, 100%. Like specifically Chad, he was very, he's like maybe 18. He still was thinking of adults as grown-ups. You know what I mean? And totally, I think that happens all the time in this kind of situation where you are just like, no, it has to be right.
Yeah.
It has to be right. Otherwise, it's really bad.
I remember being 18 and I was at a parade in New Orleans and I saw a guy dressed up as the devil and I was like, he's the devil. You can't dress up like the devil. The devil's real and he's bad. And my friend had to like stand in between and be like, look over there, Amber. And I was like, I don't like it. And then like, I think I walked out of a movie because it had an upside down cross. And look at me now.
And like, there's nothing like, if that's something that makes you feel bad or uncomfortable, there's nothing wrong with like walking out. But if it's in your world, in your life, I hope it's not something that consumes you to a point where it's causing like a mental distress or like causing
or like God's
fear.
Mad at me because I went and saw the movie and I shouldn't have gone out. I should stay in.
Yeah. So I hope that doesn't feel like that.
No. I mean, you get very much indoctrinated in this, and it feels like. You're right. Like this we look at it as a nuance, but when you're in it, you're just like, oh, that's just Carol.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they are basically, preppers are doing the LARPing. They are full-time LARPing inside of this world, just absolutely salivating for the Rapture to come. So in an interesting video that was made by that same channel I just mentioned, Hidden True Crime, Chad's sister-in-law, so Chad's brother's family property, that was where Chad and Julie Rowe had planned on creating. They basically said they saw a vision and it's on Chad's brother's property. So they were on Hidden True Crime. The woman, Lauren Mathias from the channel, was taken around the property by Chad Daybell's sister-in-law to just show her like, this is where they had planned out the 10 cities. They were expecting to make them. They were all going to be called out and it was going to be on Chad's brother's land very conveniently. And they really thought that they were all going to be living in tents on it. Ugh. And yeah, it's crazy. Chad and Julie, and just as, again, a reminder, I try not to repeat myself too much, but I know there's a lot of names coming up. Chad and Julie were both AVOW participants. This is all tied in to AVOW, to all of the bigger names that we've been talking about. I want to take a listen because I want you to get an idea of who Julie Rowe is. I'm going to just play a little bit of a clip of her interview. This is from when she did an interview with a journalist named Nate Eaton, who did a great job covering the Chad and Lori crimes when the kids were still missing. This was her speaking about what it's like in the community that her and Chad are inside of.
From what I understand, your first book did pretty well.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many copies we sold. Thousands.
Enough to write more.
Yeah, I had my second book that went to press. So on that trip where I met them in person, after my book went to press, it had only been out a month. And one of my guardian angels, well, basically I say the Lord, but really, sometimes it's the Lord's voice himself, and sometimes he sends messengers like through my guardian angels or ministering angels. And I remember my book had been out 3 weeks, and I had told everyone I'm only doing one book because that's all they told me, and I had no desire to write anymore. And after I did a radio show on Mills Crenshaw and told everybody that, literally the next day I got a message from the other side of the veil, and they're like, hey, there's another book. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so I took a lot of flack for that because I told everybody I'm only doing one book. And then I said, oh, I have another one,
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, she just wants to be famous. I'm like, no. See, this is how it goes with communication. They only tell you what you need to know when you need to know it to get to the next level of your progression or your place in your plan or to help or whatever. And I wouldn't have been open to it anyway, right? And so then I opened my heart and I was like, okay, Lord, if you want me to do another one, I will.
What would you say Chad's gifts are? Being a visionary?
He's visionary. He has some gift of hearing. And he, I know he's going to watch this. He's not going to like that I say this, and he's probably sitting out there. Truthfully, as I got to know him, I realized that I had more gifts, that mine were more expansive, that my gift of hearing was sharper.
You mean gift of hearing the spirit?
Yes, gift of hearing the spirit. So there's different hearing gifts and sight gifts, different types of vision. Sometimes people can see it in their mind's eye. Sometimes they actually see it with their eyes. Sometimes it's more like on the crown of the head. It just depends on what the visionary gift is. And I have all of those. Chad, the way he described it to me was he would look down like when he was writing a manuscript, and he could kind of see it in his mind's eye, like through his third eye, is how he described it to me, which is different than how it works for me. I usually just see it, and I can see multiple dimensions.
Crazy. She looks like I'd see her at a bar and then she'd want a threesome with me or something.
She actually, Amber, that is very close to her current personality. Yeah.
I'm right. Wasn't right about the pedophile, though.
Yeah. It's going to be really easy to dismiss her as like a kook. She's very mentally ill, in my opinion. I think most people agree with that. But what you heard, that woman, I need to get it across that people believed her. Thousands and thousands of LDS people believed her enough that they bought her book. They would go to her speeches. They thought she was a prophet. And it was what eventually caused her to be excommunicated, but it didn't make all of that go away. So the same people who were using Visions of Glory as a guidebook were the ones listening to her. The creator of that story, Tom Harrison, is a big name in the wellness industry in the Mormon Belt. Tom, again, has high-up connections to the church, as does his cohort, Ken Krogh. Do you just see the distinction I'm trying to make here? That these quote-unquote wackos are not fringe. There are huge swaths of the church, including leadership. The church will excommunicate some of these people, but seemingly only so that they can keep the sort of line, the midlines safe. Clearly mentally unwell people like Julie Rowe are an easy target to excommunicate because she would become more and more erratic online. She's a woman. There's like reasons that they can take her off. But all the people who supported, enabled, boosted, and propped her up have not been, including Tom Harrison. Tim Ballard, who we haven't gotten to yet, got excommunicated, but that's only because his many victims were LDS women and the lamestream media got a hold of the story. They're not interested in the root causes because the problems that we're seeing are pretty similar to what the church is selling. So we're going to stop here today. We haven't gotten into all of the other little side niches. We'll touch on them. For the story's sake, we don't need to go too deep into things, but there's other things beyond Eternal Core, beyond AVOW. There's something called Firm Expo. There's this thing called Preparing a People. There's a corp called Liberty 89 that are all connected to these same groups of people, have the same thought processes, and have caused a lot of pain and damage. And there are really very big world consequences to these actions. And not all of it is just the terrible tragedy that happened when, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell's families were murdered. Sometimes it's just destroying somebody's life or taking all their money. People have not shied away from this prepper culture. And there are actual plans for another tent city happening right now. Our friend Ken Krogh is actually in the middle of a legal conflict that is, on the surface, a kind of quirky small town issue, but it actually has big, big world consequences. So let's stop here and we'll pick back up learning about what Ken Krogh is up to these days.
Love it. I got to mukbang one of these buckets. One of these buckets is $140.
Yeah, it's a money-making industry.
Whoa, you guys are grifters.
But I do think you should mukbang one.
I should
really
mukbang.
would love to see that. Actually, I can't watch mukbang. It makes my stomach hurt.
Oh,
but
when they smack? Absolutely not. What's it called? The Patriot Bundle? This is like an Onion article.
Oh yeah, it's a psyop. It's like just using the words like patriot, flag, liberty.
God, what are some things you could do to like? I mean, I get it because I'm like anytime like Cancer, like that's my zodiac sign. Anytime that's on a candle or a bracelet,
sure.
I'm like, oh, I gotta get it. I'm a Cancer. You know?
So true. I mean, marketing. We all are susceptible to it. We're not immune from marketing.
Yeah.
We should make Hail Yourself food buckets, like Hail Sane food buckets.
It's just mashed potatoes.
Yeah. Just like expired.
The 72-hour bundle kit. Damn.
Yeah. So again, the kernel of truth is that it's really good to be prepared for an emergency.
That's right.
It's really good to have a kit.
You're good to have a kit. 1 year supply, over $3,000.
Yeah. And that's just the food. Tents and all of the survivalist stuff, the sleeping bags and everything, that's tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And just like what I mentioned in 2015, that store sold out of everything in that moment because Julie Rowe wrote these books.
This religion could not thrive under anything besides capitalism.
Oh, I mean, it is capitalism.
It is.
It's America. This is the most American religion that's ever existed. Like by far. Wow. It's this little model for what we're all going through right now in the country.
Wow. All right.
So chew on that. Put that in a food bucket.
Mukbang. Oh.
Coming up next week. It might be nice to imagine that once the murder spree was discovered, it would be a wake-up call to the LDS prepper community. But those who stayed seemed to only triple down. And in the county of San Pete, Utah, the discussions of creating tent cities has infiltrated the government.
Hey, I'm Paul Scheer.
I'm June Diane Raphael.
And I'm Jason Mantzoukas.
And we're the hosts of How Did This Get Made, a comedy podcast where we deconstruct, make fun of, and celebrate the best, worst movies ever made.
Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad that it's actually good? That's what we're talking about.
From blockbuster franchises and made-for-TV romances
to bonkers 80s action flicks and obscure sci-fi musicals, we cover it all.
You can find How Did This Get Made wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Idiot.
If you're frustrated with low sex drive, Vyleesi can help. Vyleesi, or bremelanotide, treats low sex drive in women with no daily medication, no alcohol restrictions, and no hormones. Vyleesi is clinically proven to increase your interest in sex. Take control of your sex life on your terms and visit Vyleesi.com to schedule a telemedicine appointment. That's VYLEESI.com. Vyleesi is a prescription medicine used to treat hypoactive sexual desire disorder, HSDD, in premenopausal women who have not had problems with low sexual desire in the past and have low sexual desire no matter the type of sexual activity, situation, or partner. The low sexual desire is troubling to them and is not due to medical, mental health, or relationship problems, or medicine or other drug use. Do not use Vyleesi if you have uncontrolled hypertension or known heart disease. The most common side effects include nausea, flushing, injection site reactions, headache, and vomiting. Consult your healthcare professional for more information and see full PI at Vyleesi.com or call 800-922-1038. Go to Vyleesi.com for a telemedicine appointment to find out if Vyleesi is right for you. That's VYLEESI.com.